All right. Well, welcome everyone. Hi Neil.
Hi.
How are you? So another LIS 2021. Welcome everyone. This is exciting. There's so many things that we have ready for you. I hope that everyone is as excited as we are. We have a great program. I am really looking forward to well, a lot of the presentations over there. We also have a ton of sponsors. Thank you everyone who helped in. Should we go through all of them once? What do you think? There's so many things that we have ready for you. I hope.
Sure, I think, yeah, if we just quickly mention all our wonderful sponsors.
Over there.
And you can meet a load of them in the office hours we have coming up during the breaks. So it's certainly a huge thank to CodeThink, Collabora, Fedora, GitLab, Jingling, Linux Magazine, Ambition, OpenSUSE, Pine64, Red Hat, Sesame by IT Renew, Shells.com, Slimbook, Tuxedo Computers, and Ubuntu. We really appreciate your support for Linux App Summit, especially in these somewhat trying times that we have to all meet virtually. It's thanks to the support of the sponsors and everyone attending that we're able to really carry on and bring this to everyone.
Yep.
Yeah. Alish, I think you want to talk about some social events that we have coming up.
Yes, we do. We will have a Kung Fu class tomorrow after the session. So, well, everyone is welcome. We know it's a bit of a new, different thing, but we feel like it's also a cool thing that we can do together. Please remember to join. Also, we do have 2 rooms. Like you can be chatting over here, but you can also, well, it's not even 2 rooms. It's 1 room that you can join through either Telegram or Matrix. I posted the links above early on. We can post them again later. Just click there and join and talk to us. Obviously, be respectful. We do have a code of conduct. Remember that we're all friends and we should stay friends after the conference. There's also some buff slots that are still available. If you want to have a discussion with people from the conference and you feel like, well, here it's a good place to have it, then just either tell any of us from the organization or reach out to the mailing list and we will add it and help you announce it a little bit further.
Absolutely. So yeah, just wanted to also highlight a couple of our keynote speakers. We have coming up, we have Karen Sandler, who's the Executive Director of Conservancy. And she's absolutely fantastic, known her for ages. And our other keynote speaker is Kathy Gilgry, who's been doing loads of different things. So things like at Mozilla, she worked on the Web Things project and has and plays a lot with hardware and microcontroller boards and IoT and things as well. So there's 2 fantastic keynotes as well as the BOFs and things we have coming up. So I guess next we have coming up in this room, I think we have Will Thompson. Is that right, Alish?
No.
I'm misreading the schedule.
Thursday, first time is adaptive apps. The feature is now.
Tobias Bernard, yeah.
Yes. So let's leave everyone with that first talk, and I hope everyone has a great conference.
Fantastic, and hopefully everyone has a great time. See you all soon.
So do I just start sharing my screen, or I don't know? Do I just start?
I think it would be better if we would be on time, so if you could wait for a few more minutes.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, yeah, because it wasn't really clear. Like,
can prepare.
okay, people cannot hear me. Well, that's an issue. Wait, but so some people can hear me now, or okay. Well, then I guess it's not my problem. Wait, let me maybe readjust so the light is not on the camera. I can already start sharing my screen, I guess. So yeah. Is this working? Yes. All right. Well, it would be better, but the problem is if I do demos, then I would have to turn off the screen sharing like 17 different times, which I heard is not a great idea. So, yeah. It would be cool if I could do both, but apparently that's not possible. If anyone has an idea for how to do that, I'd be open to it. But like I was told that the best way to do it was just like do the slides via the screen share, because otherwise, yeah, it's. I mean, also because like yeah, every time you turn on and off like the screen sharing, it's there's like 3 different dialogues in the browser, and I guess if that was more streamlined, maybe it would be better. But yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. Like, what exactly are we waiting for? Like, the starting time is 10, or I don't know. I guess someone will tell me. Okay, cool. By the way, what does
Tobias, can you hear me? Or the others? Okay, awesome. So that's good. I think that we're on time for Tobias to start.
Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Oh, I can hear myself. Okay, no, not happening. All right, so it's time now or what? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Then let me get this set up. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Tobias. I'm on the design team, and yeah, this talk is not going to be totally new to those of you who have seen my previous Widget talks. I used to always give these talks about like sort of state of GNOME Mobile and like adaptive apps and just generally the app ecosystem, like developer tools and so on. And this is going to be like basically another one in that series. I didn't give one last year because there were no real conferences, and I think at the time the thinking was very optimistic that like, oh, next year is going to be conferences again. We can, you know, do things in the future, but that future is not here yet. So here we are. This is, I guess, like the best we can do at the moment. It's a little bit unfortunate because this talk is going to have a lot of demos, and some of them are going to have like animated things, and those are going to look very bad probably because the frame rate is not is not great through this. So maybe I can like where I'm going to put the slides. Maybe I can put links to all the demos so you can build them yourself and try them. But yeah, that's kind of a handicap here. And I'll try to like do things a whole bunch of times so that maybe you can catch some of the frames in between, but it's not gonna be ideal. But yeah, so basically I'll pick up from where I left off in like 2019 when I last gave this talk, and kind of like bring you up to speed on where we are now, and then talk a little bit about the future. But yeah, since it's been a while, there's quite a few sort of like high level things to catch you up on here at the beginning. The first of which is that there is actual hardware now. There are like real mainland Linux phones, you know, not just like the Libre 5, but also the Pine phone. And there's a whole bunch of them out there, and people are using them and developing in them. It's cool, right? Like this is something that we did not have at any point in the past, and it's a real step forward, and I think we can be really proud of that. On the software side, one really interesting thing that happened, like basically since I last gave this talk, is that libhandy and the kind of like whole adaptive way of building apps went from this kind of like cool thing that a few people were doing sort of and in parts of the ecosystem to really like a core part of the GNOME ecosystem, where libhandy is now kind of like the de facto library where we put new widgets for GNOME apps, regardless of like adaptiveness or whatever. And along with that, also I think like the whole app ecosystem, both core and third party, has really embraced this direction, and yeah, we're seeing a lot of great progress in that sense. I think yeah, over the last whatever like 3 years, we've slowly been porting a large portion of the core apps. Just like to talk about a few that made like significant progress recently. Geary, like there was a fairly long-winded process, but like it's finally at the point where most of the major things are adaptive. Like there's still some things to improve around the edges, but like sort of the base layout where like, you know, it folds into various columns and so on, that is sort of upstream now. And yeah, like all of the major pieces are kind of in place. There's going to be more work coming probably, but there always is, right? Another one, for example, is Calculator, which just very recently Adrian Plazas did some really good work on, and it's now fully adaptive upstream, including all the crazy modes. I can quickly show you that because it's pretty cool. So like if it's really large or like sort of at the larger sizes, there's this max width, which is actually, yeah, it's something that we didn't really have before. I think before, yeah, either it wasn't resizable or like it just looked really bad. I'm not really sure, but anyway, now it does something sensible when you make it large. Then when it's small, like, so it does shrink to like fairly small sizes. Even in like, yeah, the crazy programming mode or whatever, like this all still works. And it has a really nice thing where like it's full width and a narrow width, and so like it changes the column width there. And yeah, I mean it's just like another example of like if you do things properly and upstream, like there's some real benefits for everyone from that kind of thing. And yeah, some other recent example, like Maps got some really nice updates at 40, thanks to I think mostly James Westman. Bilal and Chris like did a bunch of work on stuff like characters and a whole bunch of other, so the smaller like utility apps. They're all like slowly moving towards being adaptive or are already there. And yeah, I think we've really made a lot of good progress here over the last few years, and I think we'll continue to for the next few cycles. The third-party apps, as usual, are a little bit ahead, where like I think, yeah, basically for the last 2 years or so, like almost every third-party app that where it makes sense for it to run on like a mobile form factor has been adaptive. Yeah, these are just like a few of the nicer examples. One that I want to show you is this translation app called Dialog. And the cool thing here is that basically like, you have these two entries like next to each other on a wider screen. Then when you make it narrow, it just puts them above one another. It's just like a really natural, nice way of doing that. So yeah, kudos to the developers. This is a really well done app. So yeah, that's kind of like the current app ecosystem we have. Looking ahead a little bit, like GTK4 is finally out, and that's sort of a big generational shift. Like we're not really seeing a ton of the benefits of that yet because most of our apps are not actually ported yet. But that's going to be ramping up like the next few cycles. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but that's going to be really, really cool. Zooming out a little bit from our like specific context to like the wider industry, one of the things that's been really interesting the last few years is how like the entire industry is moving in a similar direction to what we have been trying to do, where like basically you have a single app, code base, and UI, and you just adapt it to various form factors in sort of like the ways that are necessary, but like without completely redoing the app. And I think particularly interesting is that Apple is also doing it now, where like in the past they were kind of like the odd one out, where they were always like, no, the iPhone is like a special flower, and the Mac is completely, you know, its own thing, and like you should make two completely separate apps. But like with if you like look at last year's WWDC developer talks, like there's a lot of talk about like sort of these various like device form factors, and then like with Mac Catalyst you can port iPad apps to the Mac. Like it's just sort of like an automatic part of your development workflow. And like even on the design patterns, I think they're talking about like you have a tab bar at the bottom like on a phone. You move that same stuff to the sidebar on the tablet, and then the sidebar with some small changes stays exactly the same on the Mac. And so it's really cool to see that everyone is sort of like going in the same direction, and you know, I guess it validates what we're doing also from a conceptual point of view. So yeah, that's a little bit sort of like the high level updates. Let's dive into widgets. So I think when I was last giving this talk, we were kind of at the point where most of the important widgets that you needed to like actually port apps, like to sort of, I don't know, do navigation and things like that, we kind of had. But we were working on a lot of like sort of nice sort of improvements on top of that, like for example the back swipe gestures and so on. And all of that stuff is now merged and has been in actual use for like over a year. So I think yeah, none of that is like particularly new, but I'm gonna go through them quickly anyway, just like to catch you up. Yeah, I think the first and maybe most important one of those is like the swipe gestures, especially on DAC at Leaflet. So here's an example in Contact where at the smaller sizes, basically like you can click the back button, or you can like on a touchpad or a touch screen, just like sort of swipe, just acceleration and sort of just, you know, like all of these little details, like it dims the background and just like behaves the way you would expect it to, which as always is always surprisingly hard, right? But yeah, that just works now. And yeah, Alexander Mikalenko did a lot of really good work on this. And yeah, I think like probably all of you are already using some apps that do this, so it's not like particularly new, but yeah. Sort of a sister widget to this one is the flap widget, which is basically the same thing except like not covering the whole view. And this only landed fairly recently, so there's not like a lot of apps that actually use it yet. But so this is kind of like initial step towards porting events, like making it adaptive, that comes with this widget. And basically, yeah, it's like this transient sidebar. It's not like a completely separate view. It's basically like an additional like space to show some information related to the view. So in this case, like the sidebar with the pages, and you can like open it with the button or swipe it like with the same kind of like gestures as the leaflet or the deck. Another one that I don't think I need to show you a special demo for, because all the apps here basically do it, is the round the bottom corner. So that's something that we've wanted for a really long time, and that for technical reasons was always difficult, because like we could round things, but we couldn't like really have that also clip the background, or like clip the children like inside a container. And so essentially, you could end up with glitches where, like, in some cases it's rounded, and in other cases there's like stuff kind of sticking out. So we couldn't really do that. Thanks to Alexander's work on HUI window, that is finally possible, along with some other really cool things. But yeah, it's just like one of those things where you sort of like think about it and plan for it for years and years, and then eventually like it finally happens, and it's just really cool to see that. Speaking of cool things Alexander did, the tabs widget is another really cool thing that we got in recently, where basically like historically we had GTK Notebook, which you can kind of use to make tabs widgets, but like it only does a fairly small amount of the stuff that you would want like from a proper like web browser tab system. And so there was a lot of inconsistency between different apps, because like they had to implement stuff like pinning or whatever like by themselves, and like the key bindings and like all sorts of stuff. And with these new tabs, it basically has everything that you expect from sort of proper browser level tabs, where like you can sort of reorder them with animations, and you can scroll. Like before, there were like these shitty arrows that was pretty lame. And yeah, you can like move stuff between windows, and like it all works in the way you would expect. And it's just, you know, there's like hundreds and hundreds of little details, but if they're in place, like it just like feels so much better. So yeah, that's currently in web only, as far as I know. But it's coming, like in the medium term, it's coming to all the apps that we have that have tabs. So like Nautilus and so on. So yeah, that's going to be really cool, I think. Another one is avatars. So historically, we had a whole bunch of widgets implementing some kind of like standard avatar, or sort of like fallback default avatar thing, where like if there's no avatar picture, like it will generate one from the name and so on. And there's like a lot of edge cases with this, because like sometimes you have a first name, sometimes you have a first name and a last name, sometimes you have like a whole bunch of names. Depending on the size of the characters, like you need to scale it differently. Like there are different sizes at which you want to use them. So yeah, we had a bunch of implementations that all had kind of like different issues. There was one in Fractal and one in Contact, I think, and one. Well, there's the one that's still used in the shell that we're hopefully going to get rid of soon. But yeah, so now there's like a new one in the Handy that actually covers all the edge cases, and that looks nice and like does all the things you would want. Including, like, for example, if you look at this one and this one, they're not actually the same exact image. Like the letters here are smaller than on here, so that like they're more visible at the smaller sizes, but they don't get huge on the large sizes. So that's all these little details that you really want to get right. And I think we're pretty happy with what we have now. So yeah, thanks Julian and everyone else who worked on making this happen. And I guess like over the next few cycles, we're hopefully gonna get to the point where we just use them everywhere. I think like, yeah, right now they're in Contacts, in Geary, in Calls, and maybe a few other things, but yeah, I think we're getting there. Another one that's also not like super new is the carousel, which, yeah, I think I already had a working version of that like at my last talk, but not as an actual app to show you, so maybe that's a bit nicer. So yeah, it's basically just like a paginated scrolling widget. It can be vertical or horizontal, but like, yeah, we usually use it for these kind of like slideshow things, and yeah, you got all the same like nice acceleration gestures as with stuff like back gestures. And yeah, that's just like sort of a cool primitive to have for a whole bunch of places. This is one that I personally really love. It's like a really small detail, but it's just really delightful. So sometimes you have lists where you want sort of like various things to be grouped, but then you also want them to expand. But then when you expand them and they're still like grouped in the list, it looks a bit weird. And so what we have here is the ability to basically like split out things dynamically from the list, so that yeah, essentially like they become their own kind of like semantic unit. And yeah, it's just like one of those really nice details that I personally really love, and that yeah, I wish we would do more of this kind of stuff, because it's just like it really elevates things when you have these nice little touches. So yeah, I don't want to talk too much about all the stuff, because I think yeah, you've all been using it for a while, so it's it's nothing like too new. A few more things to shout out, like generally the HTY window thing makes header bars a lot more flexible, so we can now do like stuff like header bars above the content, or like have them be transparent, or like slide out sometimes, or whatever. Like the whole separation between header bar and content is now essentially gone. So that allows for a whole bunch of cool stuff. The column, which is basically like to have a max width on things, can now also be used vertically. So just like also for max heights or something. And so it was renamed to climb, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. There's now a status page widget, which is sort of like for if you want an icon and some text below it, or whatever, for empty states and the like. And there's also like apps can now in their desktop file like sort of tell the operating system that they're like optimized for mobile. So that's helpful for example, like filtering things out on mobile distributions. So yeah, that's some of the stuff that I guess we got done over the last few years. But now let's talk about future stuff, because I think that's always where the excitement really comes in, right? So one of the things that we've wanted for a really long time, and I think that was sort of like a missing part of our developer story for, yeah, since forever, basically, is a proper widget library that actually like aligns with our platform. Because I think historically, the strategy was always to like move shared widgets into GTK. But then there were always issues with like the release cycles kind of like being misaligned, and often we were like kind of frustrated that like our UX goals could not really be met for like obscure GTK reasons. And so going forward, we really want to have a widget library that is actually like synchronized with our design, that is specific to our platform, and that doesn't like need to have all these extra considerations that are not really relevant for GNOME. And yeah, I mean, basically, like for the last few years, I already alluded to this. LibHandy has kind of become this for GTK3. Like initially, it was just a bunch of adaptive widgets, but then, like, since it was the place where everything was going, like people also started adding more generic widgets to it. For example, like the list rows and the avatars and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think it is de facto that now, and we just made it official. But for GTK4, we would like something slightly sort of more like cleaner in terms of branding and messaging. So we're introducing a new library called LibreOffice, which is named after like the rest of our visual language, like the icons in the style sheet use that name, so it kind of made sense to use it here as well. And basically, initially, it's going to be a GTK, or like it already is a GTK4 port of LibHandy, plus minus a few things that got upstreamed or whatever. And yeah, essentially, like going forward, this is going to be the new place where all the sort of like GNOME-specific widgets go. And it's going to be the place that app developers can look at as like the canonical implementation of all the like core patterns. And in addition to that, one thing that's also currently in the works is a new version of the human interface guidelines, which sort of like it all ties in together in the sense that like historically one of the issues with the HIG was that we were documenting patterns that we didn't like have a single like canonical implementation for. So like we would describe a thing, but then you would have to build it yourself, like based on basically that description. And like there were all sorts of copy-pasted implementations in various apps, or still are in some cases. And so going forward, what we want is like for the human interface guidelines to actually be synchronized with LibreOffice, so that like you read about a design pattern like in the HIG, and then you can just go use it. Like you know, there's a link there to the widget for how to do it. And I think that's going to be a major step forward for our developer story. As you know, as always, like you can never have enough widgets. I think we are at the point now where, like, yeah, there's not that many things missing, quote unquote, to like build like really nice adaptive apps. But you know, there's always additional things where you can make things easier for app developers, and I don't really see that changing anytime soon. One thing that we've talked about recently was sort of like having a built-in version of like sort of the adaptive side of a tabs widget. So like we have new tabs, but they are like basically desktop only. And ideally, we would like, as part of that, to have sort of like a mobile component as well, where like you have your text editor or whatever that like has tabs on a desktop. But then if you want it to run on a mobile form factor, like it would be cool to, if the tabs just like work there as well, and you don't have to do something custom. Like Epiphany has a custom tabs implementation that sort of does essentially this. But it would be cooler if app developers didn't have to do a whole bunch of work to get that. So I have a demo here. Let's see. I have a demo here that Alexander made. This is kind of like, so on desktop you just like have basically these regular tabs. You can do all the regular tab things. And then if you like resize it to a smaller size, you get this panel here at the bottom where you can like add and remove tabs, switch between them and so on. Like this design is like not 100% set in stone, but I think something in this direction is probably what we're going to go with for GTK 3. For GTK 4, it's an open question. Like we might do something fancier or not, like depending on various other factors. But yeah, this is something that we would really like to have. Then there's a bunch of things that are more like on the wish list, but that I want to talk about, like just sort of to give you a more general idea of like the kinds of things that we're thinking about. One problem with, so the last few years we've generally moved most layouts to list boxes because it's just like a cleaner, more flexible pattern than the old kind of like form layout. But one of the problems with that is that entries don't really work that well in that. So they don't really mix that well with list rows. And so it would be cool to have list rows that are like optimized for that kind of work, for that kind of layout. And so we have designed for a new list row entry widget that would basically look a little bit like this in context, where you have a list row that is actually the entry, as opposed to like having sort of like a box and then another box inside the box, and the label kind of like taking up half the width, so you can only have really narrow ones. And it would solve a whole bunch of issues with that. It's not like a deal breaker for anything, but it would be cool to have. So yeah, if anyone's interested in helping with that, by the way, contact us. But yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that probably we're gonna look at medium term once all the LibreOffice stuff lands and so on. Another one in a similar vein is the whole in-stack dialog kind of situation, where like on desktop you want dialog to be a separate window that's just like overlaid, right? But on mobile that doesn't always make sense, because like, you know, if your window sort of needs to take up the whole screen anyway, you like structurally it would make more sense if it was just like a panel that you can swipe away, right? Like, so it's basically an in-stack view instead of a separate window. And technically that's kind of difficult, because yeah, you need to like sort of dynamically get rid of a window, of a secondary window, and merge it into the stack. Is it working? All right, can you see things? All right. Yeah, sorry about that. ISP issue, I guess. I don't know. No internet anywhere in the house. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means for the schedule because I theoretically have like 3 minutes left. But yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, Telegram is the only thing that worked because like there was like I tried to ping and like basically every 15 seconds like 3 packages went through and the website was not loading at all. I have no idea. But yeah, I don't know. Like this, do any of the organizers want to tell me what to do? Like, should we just cancel it at this point? Because yeah, I can't finish it in 2 minutes. I can go until 53. All right, yeah, maybe we can make that work. I'll try to be fast then. So yeah, there's some more stuff to be done on system dialogues. There's ongoing work, but yeah, this needs to be this needs some more work basically. But yeah, let's get to the really cool part of the talk, which is GTK4 stuff. So as you know, GTK4 is out. There's not that many apps using it yet, but like we're like at the point where we can start porting to it very soon. And there's like a few things in particular that I'm very excited about. The first of those is animation, and that's just like in general, but like specifically a few things that we can do now that we could never do before is things like this, which is like proper physics-based animation of like various different things. This is a demo that Alexander put together, I think with some help from Manuel Genovese also. They really like did an amazing job like making sort of proper physics-based string animations work. And this is like all GTK, you know. It feels weird, you know, to be saying that, or you know what I mean, like. But yeah, this is like a whole new world of animations that we could never really do before. And yeah, the next thing that's probably we're not going to be using a whole lot, but it is something that's cool to have, like for a lot of like sort of smaller details. Similar to on the web, I think, is 3D transforms. And here's a very interesting demo of something that we're definitely not going to do, but like sort of that shows off the power of this a little bit, where it's like a full like 3D environment. And yeah, this is all GTK4. So yeah, a 3D transform is something that we could never really do before with GTK widget, and that we will be able to do with GTK4. And yeah, it's one of those things that is great to have in your tool set, even if you don't use it a ton. But really, the thing that I think I'm most excited about is probably just the ability to scale things, because that was kind of like a huge bottleneck for a lot of like the nicer animation stuff in GTK3. Because we could move things, but like actually scaling them is really important for a lot of the things that you actually want to do with animation, especially when it comes to like transitioning between states and so on. And yeah, that is something that we can finally do. And this demo I think really shows off what you can do with that. Also, huge kudos to Alexander for putting that together. So on desktop or like on a large size, you like have sort of a regular tab bar. And like if you resize it, you sort of like get this mobile thing. But also, there's this button that you can click, and it like actually zooms out the tab, and it gives you a grid with sort of like all the other tabs. And this is the kind of UI that personally, like I'm not sure how familiar you are with like my history of giving talks, but like this was my very first Guadic talk, was about basically this kind of stuff, like semantic animation, like these kind of like state transitions. Between so like completely different states that are like totally spatially clean, and yeah, this I could not be more excited about the kind of stuff that that we're going to be able to do this kind of stuff. And also one interesting thing that this demo does is this very cool sort of like clean spatial color switcher. I think it's using shaders or something. I don't really understand this. You can ask Alexander in the chat, but yeah. This is the kind of amazing shit that we're going to be able to do with GTK4. One final demo that kind of puts it all together into one really awesome package is this one, which is basically like the ability to morph layouts and like keep elements around. So like here we have these wallpapers and like a label and this icon, and I can click one, and it not only scales up the wallpaper, but it keeps the text and the icon around, where basically like they actually move to their new position. I'm sure like you can see 0 of these things in the actual stream, but I'm gonna put links somewhere where you can actually build these yourself. But this is the kind of stuff that I've been personally waiting for many years to be able to do this in GTK, and it's amazing that this is finally on the horizon. So yeah, quick summary, since we have probably like 2 more minutes. Mainline Linux phones are a real thing now. Developers have them and are using them to make really awesome stuff. Our app ecosystem is like going adaptive left and right. It's really cool. Our developer experience with the widget library and the HIG is looking better than ever, and yeah, some really cool stuff there on the horizon. And GTK4 stuff, I mean, yeah, do I need to say anything else? Like, this looks so amazing. Like, it's really a whole new world. So yeah, that's just to say the future looks really bright, and I'm excited about where like GNOME, not only mobile but desktop and like everywhere else is going in the near-term future. Some quick thanks, because yeah, I'm the designer here. Like most of the stuff that I'm showing you here is obviously made by other people. A huge thanks to Alexander Mikhalenko for not only like making most of the stuff that I showed you today, but also like just helping with demos and like always being around. Thank you so much. But also the rest of the Purism crew, Adrian Plazas, Guido Günther, Julian Sparber, for all the work, like porting all the apps, like reviewing things, like really everything that you're doing. It's so amazing. And yeah, there's a whole bunch of people from the community as well who have done amazing work. Xander, Felix, Andre, Bilal, and really many others. And yeah, let's not forget about the design team, or like the wider design team, Alan and Jakub, who have been doing a lot of really good work on the HIG. Yeah, as I said, like most of the stuff that I'm showing you here is not like my work, but sort of like a summary of stuff that this whole community has done. I'm really, really proud of what we've achieved over the last few years. Yeah, if you would like to be part of this amazing community, here are some ways to get involved. It's all on GNOME GitLab, or like, there's matrix rooms that you can join and hang out. Yeah, join us. Let's build awesome things. Thanks. And yeah, do we have time for questions, or I guess not, right?
Not really, but if you want, you can write down the answers to the questions of the shared notes.
Okay, yeah, I can do that sort of just like asynchronously, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, thanks so much, everyone, and sorry about the glitch. I guess at least I got to finish it somehow. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you for the talk. So now, while we wait for Kevin to upload his slides, you should now be able to. Let me know if you have any issue with that. Okay, I see you're using the pointer, so I guess you can do it. Right, can you try to unmute your microphone? I think you'll have to rejoin and select join with microphone. Okay, so while we wait for our speaker to rejoin the room, let me introduce the next presentation. So next on stage is Kevin Liang, and he will talk about application and popularization of Windows programs on Ubuntu Kylin. Let's see if... Okay, while we wait for Colin to rejoin, let us thank our sponsors again. And if you haven't and you want to chat with other members of the conference, with the other participants, you can find the link to the Telegram channel and to the Matrix channel in chat. We also remind you that if you want to ask a question to the speakers, please use the shared notes that are on the left side of your screen above the participant list. So let's wait a few more seconds and see if Colin managed to rejoin the chat and the presentation, hopefully.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Hello. There's some little problem. Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone. I'm Keng Liang from Killingsoft. Today, my speech is the subject is application and populations of Windows program on Ubuntu Killing. I will introduce the work we have done to promote Windows application on Linux. Okay. The speech have this part one. Wait, okay. The speech have this part one. Current situation of Linux application ecosystem. Two, shortcomings one at the current status. Next, the work of Windows application adaptation on Linux by Ubuntu Killing. The first part is our future research and development plan about how to run one on ARM architecture. Let's look at the current situation of Linux application ecosystem. Look at this picture. Windows system occupy most of the marketplace. So for Linux, there are a chicken and egg problem. Until Linux can provide equivalence for the Windows application, its market share on the desktop will stagnate. But until the market share of Linux on desktop raise, no wonder we'll develop application for Linux. How should we break this vicious circle? One is a good answer. We use one in our operating system products to replacement the user requirement for Windows application. And some users have already paid a high cost for the previous solution they used on Windows, mainly in terms of labor costs, learning costs, and license fee. By reduce the migration cost in this part, more users can be attracted to migrate out of the Windows platform. We think the Linux desktop is sufficient for daily use by normal user, but the main difficulty in domain-specific market with the zero-cost migration solutions described above. It's dramatically lower the barriers that prevent user from switching to Linux, which increases its market share in that domain. Okay, let's look at the one architectures. The top is Windows ESC and door, and the bottom is Linux kernel. One is in the middle. It is a compatibility layer capable of running Windows application on several POSIX compliant operating system, such as Linux, Mac OS, and BSD. One can load PEgram like Windows ESC door and run it as an ELF program on Linux. The one server can manage different Windows apps and different Windows. So by one, Windows apps can run on Linux. Let's look at the shortcomings one at the current stage. Let's look at the shortcomings one at the current stage. WeChat and Tencent meeting are popular applications on Windows desktop in China, but these apps have many bugs when run them on Linux with one, and the support for this program in one is insufficient. Also, the use of one is a bit difficult for normal user, and a lot of tedious configuration work is required, which affect the promotion of one Windows application. WeChat is as Telegram in China. Let's look at the work. Let's look at the work we have done in Windows application adaptation on Linux. First, we fixed some bugs of one. Some bugs are critical. Secondly, we developed a Windows application packaging method based on one. We pack Windows application in debian package, aka deb, which is easier to manage. Also, we pack the Win to app image files, which contain all 32-bit dependency. It can directly run between the different Linux distributions and free yourself from dependency troubles. Then we pack the one again from package app image to deb format to adapt to Linux package management. The last, we also research how to run one in ARM architecture with Camel. Current stage is it runs slowly and efficiency is low. Let's look at this one fact. Okay, fix some errors about rich text editing, and implement some missing features. It is used to resolve a display issue about text and image is missing in WeChat text error. And I also fix video stream error when use WeChat group live. The picture is WeChat group live feature. You can share your screen and camera with your group number. WeChat is like Telegram in China. I also analyze the issue which WeChat can capture screen. Fix the bug related to one GDI and GDI plus component. Fix some error in QCAP library and W4L2 driver. It will cause video call field. Let's look some app image information. App image is a packaging method that can contain dependent library. The finished app image can run on any base distribution such as Ubuntu, Debian, and CentOS. The below is some information about app image. You can find more details in this website. Now I will introduce our method package Windows application. Step 1 is package Windows application by this command 1, which has set up in SE, and copy the right fonts to one container. 3, modify some registry items that the application require. By the 4, we regedit one regs. The one reg file contain. That's okay. The one reg file contains the registry keys that need to modify, which need to be at the one registry. 6, file. Copy folder to the package folder, and .1 is the container of WeChat. Create 6 icons and desktop entry files, and write a shell script to run package Windows application 1, and add this file to package package folder. The last packaging the Windows application with this command dkgb. Okay. This sum works. Works, and we also research how to run one on ARM architecture. We test the Camel. At the current stage, our tests show it run slowly and the efficiency is low, and the method the method how to run one with Camel in its user mode. Camel i386 and the one. The following is Windows apps. This is the website is menu of Camel. We also test Box 86 to run one on ARM. Some tests show it's efficient, but have also many problems. The below is some information of Box 86. Box 86, which allow you run x86 Linux program on x86 architecture like ARM. The host system need be 32-bit literal ending. The website is its main page. If you're interested of it, you can visit this website. Now we found the emulator Box 86 have good performance, but have many bugs. Okay, this page is our feature research and development plan. First, we will resolve the one bugs reported by our customer. Also, we will research rich editing and direct show module and contribute back to one community. Also, we will research other simulator technologies such as XGear Box 86. We hope run Windows application efficiently to Linux on ARM architecture. By the way, XGear is a good simulator which have many Windows applications on Android system, but it's not open source. Okay, my speech is over. My English is not as good. Okay. Any question? Thank you for your listening. Okay, let's look.
Thanks for this. There are some questions in the shared notes. I'm not sure if you can see it, if you want me to read them aloud. It's on the... Okay.
Okay, I'm looking at the channels. What's the steps must one take to analyze an issue with one and try to troubleshoot it? resolve one bug is a difficult work. I think you can first you must open the log you need. You also need learn or know Windows API, how Windows API works, how Windows API how to use the Windows API, and you need to guess the logic or the function of the Unicode and how the API works, how it's run. This is a little difficult. Also, you must do many tests and make sure what you learn about Windows API. You must be patient, and you also learn about learn a lot of the Win code. The code is large. The code is very large. Okay, you must be patient. Log analysis and learn. Repeat the cycle. I think. How the steps the learn curve take step is worried about writing, start, script, and editing. The second question. You need to learn how to edit the registry. For one, you must first install the Windows apps with one to a container. Let's look at let's look at the step. The several steps. You need to know how one works and how one find his container .win file. Of course, there are many works we have done to run one. This is my method. We development one. Okay, I can't say my mind. Varied startup scripts. If you have used one before, it's a little same. You need to know. You need to learn more about one, how one works, how one find his container. Containers. Okay, I can't say more. Could you try to write a start part clear which are that works GTK and Qt is in their order if someone is asked to test? I have no the ability write WeChat is not open source, and it's Tencent company. It's the product of Tencent company. We can't know what works. I can Linux apps for so we use one to adapt or one to run WeChat. We can write this apps. If you package Microsoft Office like that, legality license will it work? Okay, the license is a problem. I think we need to take care this problem and communicate the related company license 他就是说。Okay, if I package Microsoft like that with okay, the license is the issue. Yes. Maybe it's compatibility layer. Okay. Okay. Any question? This is my works to research one. I'm glad to share this with LAS. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for your very interesting talk. So there is one comment in the chat, if you want to take a look at it, is about why don't you, instead of packing WeChat on your own, why don't you ask Tencent to do it? It's a tricky question, I guess. Given that we have time, maybe you want to try to point or to address that one.
Okay. Huh? Package. Okay. I can you see the package. The four. Let's look. Thank you. Okay, my listening English listening skills is not as good. This is my first time attend this meeting.
It's okay. It was a very interesting talk. So virtual applause for you. Thank you again for your presentation. If no one else has any other question, I think we can have a slightly longer break than expected. So see you in about 30 minutes, if I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong, please someone stop me. And thank you again for our speaker. So next we will have two more talks in about 30 minutes. One from Italo Vignoli about LibreOffice and one by Halla Rent by Fun and Krita. So enjoy your coffee break.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Hello and welcome back. Upcoming now, we have Italo Vignoli, who's going to share with us improving project sustainability. Italo, I will have to ask you to click the blue headset button underneath the slides so you can rejoin the audio with your microphone.
You should hear me now.
Yes, welcome. Welcome, thank you for being here.
Okay. So I will talk today. Morning, everyone. I will talk today about the project we started last year about improving the LibreOffice project sustainability. We estimate to have a user LibreOffice. We estimate to have a user base of around 200 million people. This is based on the number of downloads, on the more or less on the share that we estimate to have on the different platforms. We have 90% users on Windows, 8% on macOS, and 2% on Linux. Linux is growing. Actually, during last year, it has almost doubled the number of LibreOffice users. But before changing our numbers, we want to have a stable situation. So we estimate to have around 200 million users. Half of them are only using LibreOffice, half of them are using LibreOffice and another Office suite. And when I mention Office suite, it is either desktop or cloud. So LibreOffice is a cloud version, and it's exactly the same as the desktop version. Is extremely similar. How the market has evolved. Before 95, documents had to be printed to be shared. Then with internet, we started to share the digital documents, and the concept of interoperability was born. Then in around 2005, we had the standards, and therefore interoperability was theoretically improved. The problem is that we have one real standard, which is ODF, and one non-standard, which is Office Open XML, so the Microsoft Office proprietary format. It is approved by ISO, but what has been approved has never been implemented. Although people talk about desktop productivity being dead, the numbers say that this is not true. And again, when I mention desktop, the software can be on the cloud, but desktop means individual productivity. In 2018, when Ubuntu asked their users which desktop application should be there, you see the amount of people, the number of people that wanted to have LibreOffice was amazing. Was even beyond our best guesses. And Google Apps was there since almost forever now. And although Google Apps was there, LibreOffice got around 80% of the choices. Actually, we are talking about a mature product, but a product that is not declining. And one thing that is probably adding interest is the attention for digital sovereignty. It is now clear, not only because we talk about that, but also because the authorities start to understand and to realize that to protect our digital sovereignty, which basically means the ability of managing what we share with our computers and owning what we share with our computers. The format of files is key, and unfortunately they didn't give it enough attention, and this happens in more or less in everywhere in the world. We have small exceptions, the biggest one being the state of Taiwan, but in Europe the situation is unfortunately quite bad. If we look at the market and the revenues, you see that in 2021 they still have a solid $25 billion, and in 2025 is expected to reach $31 billion. Of course, it is clear that when we speak about billions of dollars, there is a lot of attention there, and the companies that own a fair share of that market do whatever they can to protect it. And when I say whatever they can, I mean they lobby with authorities to protect their market share, and they do whatever tricks they can with the format to avoid interoperability. Interoperability basically doesn't kill the market, kills the market shares. And this is the projected growth you see is rather stable, around 5% increase year over year until 2025. When we launched LibreOffice, our model was to have a foundation and an ecosystem around the foundation. So the foundation would provide represent the community and provides the governments on the trademarks, but is not releasing a commercial product. So we release only what we call the vanilla version of LibreOffice, which is the reference version. And around that, there are companies in the ecosystem that produce release software which is optimized for enterprises. Our stakeholders are community members and the companies that add value to the project. And we have a lot of users, stakeholders, and either they don't have any involvement because they use a free product, which is absolutely fair, or they have a very low, they give the product a very low value because Office Suite are a commodity. And these has, over the last 10 years, this trend to reduce the value, the perceived value of Office Suite has increased. So today, based on the data that we can extract from our sources, so from Git, we see that 68% of all the code is developed by developers that are paid by a company active in the ecosystem. And volunteers are releasing 28% of code. On the contrary, 90% of donations are from individuals and around 10% from small and medium businesses, but only less than 5% of enterprise users contribute in any way to the project. And they can contribute by sponsoring, they could contribute by sponsoring developers, by, of course, buying a long-term supported version from an ecosystem company. They can sponsor the solution of bugs or the development of new features. This is actually what happens. Most of the companies that are the enterprises that are supporting the project at the moment are either paying developers, so paying companies to have bugs solved, or feature developed. No one, or a tiny fraction, is buying an LTS version, and this over the long term would create a problem for the sustainability of LibreOffice. Of course, the sustainability issue is not just a LibreOffice issue. We basically discovered how bad the issue could be in 2014 when the Heartbleed bug was discovered. And after that, there were some research. The most interesting and the most accurate about that was Nadia Ekbal research, sponsored by the Ford Foundation, and the paper is the title of the paper is "Roads and Bridges: The Unseen Labor Behind Our Digital Infrastructure." In 2019, Dries Buytaert, the leader of the the Akuya and owner, and I don't remember the name of the CMS at the moment, sorry, publish a blog post, Balancing Makers and Takers to Scale and Sustain Open Source. Drupal is the Drupal leader. And these are a few excerpts from his blog. And I think that Dries summarizes very well the concept. There are makers and there are takers. And if the takers are too many or become too unbalanced with takers, they can harm open source project, and they can induce the makers to behave in a more selfish manner. What is happening, in fact, is that after this problem, we have seen a number of the relicensing of open source project to avoid the use of these open source projects by large corporation. We at LibreOffice, we don't think that this is a good solution. We want to stay loyal to our copyleft license. We do not want to go open core, which is another solution, which would be to have a version, a stripped down version for the community and a full feature version for the companies. We want to have a single version, and we would like to have the companies, the enterprises, behave in a correct way with us. So going back, when we launched, this was what the summary of our announcement. And the objective was to relaunch the innovation. At the time, OpenOffice was close to dead. It is close to dead today, but Apache Software Foundation doesn't seem to realize this. But the problem is that at that time, the risk of the project being abandoned was very big. So the community, backed by several companies, took control of the product, and we wanted to relaunch the innovation and develop a self-sustaining project. Basically, OpenOffice was not completely self-sustaining because there was a large Sun investment behind it. We wanted to change the structure of the project, and basically, we decided to have the balance between community and ecosystem that I was mentioning before. We didn't want to have a single corporate sponsor or to tweak the license to make the project sustainable. So this is what the Document Foundation is doing. The Document Foundation is the foundation behind LibreOffice. And after 10 years, we can say that the Document Foundation has reached the objective, is recognized as a leading force foundation. We have established the LibreOffice brand name, although we still have the OpenOffice issue around because many people are using LibreOffice and calling it OpenOffice just because the change resistance to change even in the name is incredibly high. But the problem is that looking at these figures, so development in the last 2 years, as I said, enterprise sponsored development was 68%, volunteer is 28%, and of course volunteers are fundamental, but they are not alone, they are not enough to sustain the project at the pace that the users expect the project to go forward, to make progress. And if we look at contribution, these of course are raw numbers. They should be explained in a larger amount of time. But let's say that in terms of people, there are around 50 core contributors, 110 regular contributors, and a larger number of casual contributors. Of course, if you look at the casual contributors, the community is a lot bigger. For instance, we have 4,000 people active in localization, but you know, keeping track of everything would be really difficult. We are trying to improve in localization at the time is not fully represented in this chart, but this gives an idea more or less of the numbers. And you see in terms of commits, which is the difference. Of course, this is not to say that core is better than casual contributors, but tells you that we need to have a number of core contributors that are paid to make it absolutely sustainable. So at the moment, basically developed by ecosystem companies are a very large portion of that 78% of core contributions. And without the contribution from the ecosystem, LibreOffice would have issues in keeping up with user expectations. So what we say, we want, we looked at the background. In the first 4 years, there was a growth of the ecosystem companies. We went from 20 to 60 full-time paid developers. Then we started to lose some ecosystem companies. The number of paid developers shrinked. Now is stable, but it should grow back again. We had several development cycles. Now we are at 7. Basically, we think that the product is mature. We don't need to focus the development cycle on a specific area like it was for the first 4 development cycles. We are working at improving interoperability, user interface, solving bugs, developing features, but there is not a single area where we are taking care. The problem is that the ecosystem is not growing as much as the community. The relationship between the ecosystem and community are not ideal because there are some community members that look at ecosystem company in a negative way, and this is not good. With the young contributors coming in, and a large number of community members is not aware of the root of the background of the project, and they provide enthusiastic contribution, but in some cases they create frictions as well. So the issue is that we have to work together to develop the strategy for a next decade that guarantees and bring LibreOffice to everyone. at the moment, LibreOffice is the only viable free open source software alternative to Microsoft Office. We are at the crossroad of the FOSS ecosystem. If you look at this, the project at the time has a large community. There are volunteers. There is an ecosystem. There is a large overlap between volunteers and ecosystem. Many people employed by ecosystem companies are also contributing as volunteers in other areas. For instance, they may be translating the interface in their native language. They can organize events. There is quite a lot of overlapping. And if you look at the different, the entire FOSS world, we are basically more or less in the center, because we have a little bit of a foundation, we have a little bit of traditional software companies, and we have integration support and so on. So LibreOffice is we think is a key product for the open source ecosystem. It is a key product for the Linux ecosystem. Our objective is to provide the best free open source Office suite. We want to improve our marketing by underlining the peculiarities of the LibreOffice project. There is a big effort in producing marketing materials. I will cover that after. So the unique selling proposition of LibreOffice is the best open source Office suite ever, backed by a strong community, is providing the standard document format for interoperability, but as also providing a superior compatibility with proprietary document format. And believe me, being compatible with Office Open XML is incredibly difficult, because they are doing as much as they can to make this a mission impossible. We provide the best of open source with professional support for enterprises, and also optimize activities for managing strategic business content for the enterprises that want to use LibreOffice for that. And there are governments using LibreOffice for their objectives. So LibreOffice can be a strategic tool, and is a strategic tool for many. The next 10 years, what are we doing? So we have developed the concept of LibreOffice technology. Basically, LibreOffice has evolved from a single product to a platform for the development of different solutions, which are free open source solutions and are targeted to different public. The fact that we have a single platform for all of this represents an advantage over other software, because they have a different platform for every different public, and even for every different application. We have to reduce the perception that the Document Foundation is a software vendor, because people think that we provide support and other services. We do not. We are not for profit, so we cannot sell, and basically we cannot sell anything apart from some swags or some marketing materials. We have to communicate better and more in a more coordinated way, to make it easier for users to understand which is the best LibreOffice version for their needs. So we have to make enterprises aware that the LibreOffice version released by the Document Foundation might not be the best solution for them. On one case, yes, they would have a completely free product. On the other hand, they would not have a professionally supported product, professionally supported in terms of support availability. Volunteers cannot provide support 24 hours by 7, cannot provide support every day of the year. They have their families. They basically work according to the schedule, while enterprises want a full service support. What about LibreOffice technology? Same processing engine for all modules. The source code has been cleaned and refactored. We have a very high code quality and consistency. We have APIs that make it easier than in the past, of course, to develop product. We have a web page about LibreOffice technology. We have a white paper that explains what it is. Basically, this image summarizes the advantage. As you see, in the case of LibreOffice, we have a common productivity engine. We have the same open document format for every single application. Then we have desktop application, each one with its own user interface. We have mobile platforms. We have tablets with smartphones. And then we have cloud platforms. And the user interface is different, but it's only the user interface is different. If you look at the other software, both proprietary and open core, they have a different engine for each platform. So they have a word processing engine for the desktop, a word processing engine for the mobile, and a word processing engine for the cloud. And then they have a different format for on each platform. Yes, the extension is the same, but again, yes, the format is completely different. And believe me, it can be dramatically different in terms of XML syntax behind it. And this makes, of course, interoperability more challenging, and interoperability for users more challenging, and interoperability for software developers a really difficult mission. So we went from product to platform. Today we have LibreOffice for the desktop, LibreOffice long-term supported optimized for enterprises for the desktop, LibreOffice Online for the cloud, LibreOffice Mobile for Android and iOS, and LibreOffice for Chrome OS. All these products are from different organizations, but share the same engine. So they can have a different name. For instance, on the cloud, you have a Collabora Office Online, but the engine is the same. So consistency of format is absolutely the same. Of course, on Linux phone, I'm trying to look at questions. On Linux phone, you can use LibreOffice for the desktop. It works. We have seen on the Linux phone that have been released LibreOffice working. Of course, the user interface is not optimized. Some tweaks have to be applied, and we expect in this case that the provider of the optimized distribution for Linux desktop is doing this. Anyway, the source code is free, so it's up to people also to provide these tweaks. What we have done to go from product to platform, we work on document interoperability. These are visual example of challenging documents, and one is the original document, and the other one is exported by LibreOffice. Of course, there are still corner cases where the document opens in a completely different way. First thing to do is to look at the fonts. Fonts can be misleading. You can have the visual appearance completely different, but the contents are all there. And of course, fonts are a lock-in component, are a component of the lock-in of Microsoft lock-in strategy. It's not by chance that today that we have that the open source world provides a working solution for to replace Calibri, Cambria in Consolas and so on. Microsoft has announced that they will deprecate those fonts, and they will create brand new fonts for Windows and for Microsoft Office, so that we will have to create new open source fonts that are metrically compatible with the new fonts. And I don't think that this is just by chance. Calibri, in one sense, was a very nice font. We have Carlito that reproduced Calibri, but now Calibri will be deprecated. And I don't think that this is a coincidence. This is done on purpose because the fact that fonts were available for interoperability has reduced the number of issues that users were facing when opening a document created, for instance, with Calibri on Windows. We do round-trip tests for all the documents. There is, if you happen to open a document, a Microsoft Office document that doesn't open perfectly, in most cases, there is a workaround, there is a solution. First, again, look at the fonts, but interoperability should be there. A little bit about open document format. Is independent, interoperable, neutral, perennial, many advantages. Software based on LibreOffice technology is available, as I said, from many different companies. I have added some names here. Look, if you want to get it from the Windows Store, from the Apple Store, look for the company name. You will find a LibreOffice-based solution. If it is, if you have to pay for it, on the Windows Store or on the Apple Store, is not because we want money from you. Is the problem is that maintaining that product on the store has a very high cost, and the company has to cover that cost. So what we decided to do, we added the community label to LibreOffice release by the Document Foundation. It is not, that doesn't mean it is an open core product. That LibreOffice community has exactly the same features of any other LibreOffice software. We do not release software with different features. So what can happen is that there are features that are developed and paid by a company, and there might be a version of LibreOffice released by the company that has developed that features. For instance, Collabora or Allotropia, which are the two biggest one, that for a few months offers that feature just because it has not been merged on the main repository. But this is just a case. It's not for all feature, and can only happen in some cases where the feature was big and was not easy to develop, and it has to be tested. Then we have the LibreOffice Enterprise umbrella name from ecosystem members. At the moment, it is not widely used, but that means that LibreOffice Enterprise is professionally supported. If a company wants 24/7 support, cannot expect this from on LibreOffice community. They have to look at LibreOffice Enterprise. So this clarifies a little bit about the versions and the users. Of course, you can use LibreOffice Community on a large migration, but then do not ask to have your bug solved in one day, because this will not happen. LibreOffice Community is supported with donations. Unfortunately, there are many free riders with that version. Many universities, many government organizations, many enterprises. That number should be reduced. We know that there will always be some free riders, but we cannot have 95% of free riders and 5% of enterprises that help the project. That's not fair for the 5%, and it's not fair for the project. And LibreOffice Enterprise is a product for purchase. The price is not comparable with the Microsoft Office price. It is a typical open source, commercial open source price. Again, this to make it clear that LibreOffice Enterprise is not a new product. It's just a family name to associate, to make it easier to associate this with the ecosystem companies. How we support LibreOffice Enterprise? We have a web page. We have improved the download page. We have a LinkedIn page, LibreOffice Enterprise. We will relaunch LibreOffice certification with specific attention for LibreOffice Enterprise. We have registered business-oriented domains. At the moment, they are redirecting, but in the future, there will be specific page there. That's the business web page. That the LibreOffice download, you see, we have a business users click here, and only because we added business users click here, we add the number of clicks for the LibreOffice Enterprise page was multiplied by 10. So in many cases, it's just a fact of not being informed. This is LinkedIn LibreOffice Enterprise. This is the LibreOffice certification page. If you are supporting LibreOffice, look at the certification. We are we would like to certify you to make it wider. This is what we are doing in terms of summary. We will launch an education campaign specific about sustainability of LibreOffice, of open source project. This will probably start in June with interviews podcast. Thank you for listening, and I will look at the question now to see if there is something that I can answer. Why is not fair for the 5% not to pay for LibreOffice? Because if you are an enterprise and therefore you replace a product like Microsoft Office and you pay hundreds of euros every year for each user, I don't think it's fair for the 5% that pays for the development of enterprise features to not to support at all the free LibreOffice. So you can, if you, for instance, if you don't want to pay for solving bugs or developing features, fair enough. You can buy the long-term supported version from a company, and by paying those few euros per seat per year, you will allow that company to invest the time of their developers in the development of features, in solving bugs. What we say is that we completely understand, and the fact that we are not changing the license is that we do not want We do not want to change the license to make it permissive, to make it, we want to stay copyleft. And this, of course, brings with it a number of free riders of the, or if you want, takers of the LibreOffice product. But we don't want to allow companies, for instance, by going with a permissive license to make it proprietary in the future, because that is exactly what we fighted when we decided to create LibreOffice, and it's not by chance that Apache OpenOffice has a permissive license. This is what IBM wanted, because they wanted to kill LibreOffice, and they thought that a permissive license could kill LibreOffice. So we don't see any other license than a copyleft license. At the moment, we are Mozilla public license and LGPL. We would like to have more enterprises to support the product. We want to use some moral suasion. We want to use some education. We don't want to use other means that are restrictive, because that would not be free open source software. This would be an excuse to have the free open source software would be an excuse for a commercial strategy, and that is not what we want. We want to stay loyal to our open source principle, to our software freedom principles, and that is what we really look forward. Of course, we know that it's not easy, and we really don't want to change our license. So why we took the decision, this is, sorry, but it's off topic, but I will answer that. Because we think that the way that Free Software Foundation is behaving is not transparent at all in terms of governance. And we expect, and what they've done after all the comments have been raised is not personal to Richard Stallman, is not personal to anyone. The problem is that we think that the Free Software Foundation, if they want to be the steward of free software, they should start to be transparent, to have a democratic election methodology or process. People that have right of vote, either they are everyone or no one, but it should not be just a friend of someone like it is today. And so we, for the time being, until we do not see a change, in a real change in the governance at Free Software Foundation, we will not. This is not going to change. We keep it monitored as that. Our board, I'm not a member of the Document Foundation board, but what the board has decided is to reevaluate the position every 6 weeks, which means every month and a half, based on what the Free Software Foundation is doing. And yes, some people have already answered some of the questions. We do not have a contributor license agreement, but again, we do not want to go permissive. It's not because OpenOffice had a contributor license agreement and a copyleft license. We do not want to have a contributor license agreement, and we want to have a copyleft license, full stop. So no permissive and no other licenses. And I think I'm done in terms of timing, and I've also answered some question. I don't know if how the organizers would like to manage this. I'm done for the, and I think in time for my talk.
Yes, thank you very much for your talk. It was very interesting. Also, thanks for replying to all the questions. There are some more questions in the shared note. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so it would be great if you could maybe reply or take a look at some of them. It's like on the left side of your screen. So maybe you can reply to them typing instead of via voice, so we can introduce our next speaker in the meanwhile. So thank you again for your talk. Very, very interesting.
I stopped sharing my cam. You're not losing anything by not seeing me anyway.
Thanks again. Big round of virtual applause. So next on stage we have Hala Rent, that is giving her talk about founding Krita.
It worked. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
And now I need to figure out the presentation was uploaded. Is my presentation in Big Blue Button, or should I share my screen?
It should be there already. Just give me 1 second to check. Okay, you should now have presentation.
Start a poll, share, upload the presentation. Slide 1. I'm only seeing the Linux App Summit thing. Settings. I'm sorry, but I don't see my presentation. I also don't have a button anymore to upload the presentation.
Yeah, you can share your screen if this is easier for you. Because apparently it's not uploading because of the file size.
Oh, okay. I didn't think it was. I'm trying to upload it now, and it seems to be running. There we are. Yes. So, welcome everybody. I'm Hala Rent, and I've been the maintainer of Krita since 2004. In this presentation, I will talk briefly about what Krita is, what makes it special. I will give a history of how we've tried to fund Krita's development, the experience we had, and what's special about trying to fund development in the Linux ecosystem. So Krita is what I call a big application. It's an application people use to make money with. And that's really sort of a core thing, because if people can make money with your application, you can ask them to give you money, which you can then use to fund your application. So right now we are funding 9 people to work on Krita full-time. It's not as big as Blender's team, but it's much larger than other big applications in the open source world like Inkscape or Scribus or GIMP. Personally, I think that more projects should consider doing what we do. And if I'm honest, then I have to admit that what we do is just straight out copied from Blender. You'll find a couple of places where that's really clear. So it all started in 2007. Back at that time, we needed money to get some tablets to test Krita with. At that time, Q didn't have support for tablets. We had to write it for ourselves, and we just didn't have any hardware. I'm pasting this from Linux Weekly News because the .kde.org post has gone. It's unreadable by now. I think that Linux Weekly News really needs to get a bit more exposure. It's sort of the memory of our community. So, what's the success? Yes, it was a success. We got 2 tablets, 2 art pens, 2 normal pens. We've lost the art pens, but the normal pens and the tablets are still in use. We're still testing with them. So that was already impressive, especially if you consider that back then, in 2007, we just did not have a user base. In 2006, David Revoix, for the first time, tried Krita and told us, I can't work with this. And then in 2007, we started rewriting everything, which was stupid, but it was the big Qt3 to Qt4 move. I guess what I mean with this is, it's amazing that without a user base, we already got so much support. So, fast forward to 2009. We had been rewriting Krita for 3 or 4 years. And there were so many bad bugs. We couldn't get the bugs fixed. And then one of our community members, Lucas Trudy from Slovakia, he came up with an idea. He was going to finish his university, and between writing a thesis and last classes, he would have a couple of months where he was looking for a side job. Again, this was really early in the day, and we didn't have much of a user base, and our releases were source only. So it was really the Linux community, the KDE community, that rallied around our project, brought in enough money to make it possible for Lukas to start working on Krita. And that's, I think, when we first got a taste of what it meant to have someone working full-time on your project, because those bugs got fixed. Those performance issues got fixed. And that was a really good feeling. Pretty soon, we would have a version of Krita that users would actually like to use. What we also did, this is copied from Blender. Back then, about 10 years ago, DVDs were still a thing. We decided to start making training DVDs. Krita had gotten good enough that people could use it, that training stuff would be useful. So over the years, we created a bunch of DVDs, Animate with Krita, Secrets of Krita, the Muses training DVD, which is actually still getting sold now and then as a download. The latest on Digital Atelier. The way this works is, I agree with the authors of these DVDs, Ramon Miranda or Timothy Guillet, that I will pay them a lump sum for doing the work, and then we will release it. And as soon as it started earning out, everything is gravy. The big problem, of course, is that everyone goes to YouTube these days, which means that we are now sponsoring Ramon Miranda to do a monthly video on YouTube for Krita, which doesn't bring us any money at all. It just costs money. But it's where people go and look for training these days. That said, selling of sales of these training materials still keeps me in pin money. So, another thing that I wanted to mention about YouTube is that when we started doing fundraisers, were really surprised at how important YouTube is. Most of the referrals to Kickstarter actually came from YouTube during every Kickstarter campaign. Then we have to make a digression. 2012, I started working with 2 partners at a company called KO GmbH. We were working on a version of LibreOffice or K-Office back then for Nokia. At one point, I started thinking, well, if Krita was part of K-Office back then, if my company also starts doing Krita-related stuff, maybe it will want to have the trademark. I can't let that happen. So we started the Krita Foundation in 2012 because we wanted to be able to own the trademark. And that was the second reason. We really needed to get money because at that point, Dmitry was going to graduate, and Dmitry Kazakov is our lead developer, and I didn't want to lose him. I'm having window management issues. So, KO GmbH. We were going to work with Intel on a new version of Krita. This is back when Intel wanted to get into the tablet business because tablets were hot. It was the days where the days of Nico and Maimo were over, and they wanted to have a version of Krita on Windows that was optimized for tablets. And then they wanted to have a version of Krita that was optimized for those dual screen laptops that you can fold and use as a tablet or as a laptop. This was quite interesting. It was also the beginning of Krita on Windows. It was when we first started looking into tablet GUIs, and Intel funded this work, barely. It wasn't really enough, because the way a company like Intel funds projects like this is by going into partnership and funding part of the development, because the company is supposed to start making money of the product that Intel kickstarted. Later on, when KO GmbH went broke because Nokia went down, the Krita Foundation did some similar project with Intel. I will discuss those a bit later on. And right now, there's no money in it anymore. So, there was no money, and we couldn't sell Krita because Krita is free software, except we thought if we put Krita in an app store. And suddenly we were thinking of Steam, probably because we had some employees at KO GmbH who were really into gaming, because I hadn't heard of Steam myself. So we put Krita on Steam. That was quite a bit of work. Steam is not easy. So we thought, well, we are fully justified in asking for money. People can still download it if they want for free. And your big bonus is you can have Krita in your library on all your devices, and you will get automatic updates. And that worked for a bit until KO GmbH went broke. And when KO GmbH went broke, we suddenly lost the expertise to do updates on Steam. So our unique selling point for this app store was broken. And then we started porting Krita to Qt 5, which broke our tablet and dual interface version of Krita, which was the version we were putting on Steam. So for quite a long time, and I felt really bad about that, we couldn't update Krita on Steam. That changed when a couple of years ago, a volunteer contributor, Emmett, asked me, well, shall I put an updated version of Krita on Steam for you? And I was like, if you want to do that, yes, please. He's now sponsored to work full-time on Krita on the animation feature. Steam right now brings in enough money to pay 3 or 4 very frugal living developers. We are not getting rich out of this at all. It's not going to happen. And then there is a problem with all app stores, and we are now in a couple of app stores. You're practically sharecropping. You put your application in there and you hope to get some money out of it. You aren't in touch with your customers because they're actually false customers, not my customers. But it's right now the best we can do. So, Steam was bringing in a bit of money for KO GmbH, but we needed as a Krita Foundation to get more money to pay Dmitry. So we went with Kickstarter. These days you don't hear a lot about Kickstarter anymore. It used to be that my Twitter timeline was full of new Kickstarter projects, but 2014 Kickstarter was hot. We did our first Kickstarter. That went quite well. We wanted to get 15,000 euros. We got almost 20,000 euros. What we did really right there was have a list of 12 things that our backers could vote for. So we, in the first place, would learn what our users find important. In the second place, users really like voting because it gives them a feeling they have a say in in the project. That was lots of fun. What wasn't so much fun was back then, but it got worse. The expectation that if your Kickstarter doesn't reach the goal in, say, 2 days, it's a failure. Of course, it isn't a failure if you just get your money, but that's the perception. For this Kickstarter, we actually went a bit overboard with goodies, which is a problem in 2 ways, because goodies cost money. They are a pain to send out. And later on, it actually turned out that the tax authority might consider Kickstarter goodies to be sales instead of donations. That didn't happen for us, but it's something to keep in mind. As a marketing campaign, getting your project attention, a Kickstarter was fantastic. So we did it again the year after. KO GmbH had gone down. I had to take consultancy jobs, first with Blue Systems, then with QB. Honestly, doing a Kickstarter next to a full-time job, it's pretty much impossible. It's nerve-wracking, it's exhausting, it's really hard. But we got more money. This time we got 30,000 euros, 50% more. Of course, we also had more costs because we had more backers. Kickstarter started looking more and more like a real problem. So 2016 was the last Kickstarter. And this is a bit of a sad tale. We wanted to make a really good text tool. And we wanted to make our vector layers really good. We got about 40,000 euros, which again was more than the year before. But it did not feel right anymore. You get a lot of spam if you're doing Kickstarter. I'm still getting mail from people who backed the 2014 Kickstarter telling me, oh, this is my address and I would like to have this goodie. Sorry, you're too late. I'm sorry, so sorry. So we also did something different in 2016. This was also inspired by Blender. Blender has these fantastic open content projects where they are making a movie. And I thought, well, we can do that too. We are going to make an art book. And because we just wanted to do this not to give people exposure, artist exposure, we actually commissioned 6 artists to create art with Krita for the art book. And we actually paid them. And then we got also a lot of contributions from other artists. We made a really nice art book. It took me months of work, months that I couldn't spend coding. So if you want to fund your project through something like this, you really should have a separate team that does this and not think, oh, I'm the project maintainer. I can do this, no problem. We recently, at FOSDEM 2019, got rid of the last art books. Because what I hadn't realized, that was so stupid. I put an expiry date on the art book. I put 2016 on it. That was not smart. Then 2017. This is a word of warning. If you want to start collecting funds to fund your project, then get an accountant, a good one. The one I had was not good. It turns out that if, at least in the Netherlands, if you do sales as part of a non-profit foundation, you cannot reclaim VAT anymore. Which meant that the VAT over Dimitri's work, which was transferred from Russia to the Netherlands, which I wouldn't have expected either, and my accountant didn't know about, suddenly became due. In 2017, I just basically spent all my time untangling this mess. Now we've got a separate company that handles things like sales in the Steam store and the Windows store, and merchandise and training materials, and we have got a foundation which only gets donations. Since it only gets donations, it doesn't have, it pays VAT in the country where it purchases services. I purchased Dimitri's work. He is in Russia. In Russia, there's no VAT on programming, so I don't have to pay VAT. Same for Emmett and Owen, who are in Oregon in the United States. There's no VAT in Oregon, so that's fine. This is really something that's really important to stress, and I should have noticed that Blender actually has the same separation between our foundation and the company we now have. KD is thinking of finding ways to fund more development, and my recommendation was set up a separate company. But that company should not do contract work. But that's a point I will talk about later on. So in 2017, when everything was looking really bleak, we were running out of money until the community, and again, it was mostly the Linux and free software community that rallied around us. We didn't do a fundraiser to pay the tax bill, because the tax bill was paid for us. A VPN company, PI, just approached me on the internet and said, "Oh, shall we pay everything for you? Are you spamming me? No, it's serious." "You're serious? Thank you. Thank you." And donations started coming in. So in the end, we had twice as much money as we had before, but we felt we weren't going to do a fundraiser. What then happened is that I noticed on the Inkscape mailing list that some Microsoft people had approached the Inkscape people, "Do you want to put Inkscape on the Microsoft store, the Windows store," which was brand new back then. And I was like, okay, how hard can it be? They are offering the Inkscape people to do all the work, cut through all the red tape, set up the page, set up all the credentials, figure out how to package the application, and write me a little manual on how to do that. I'm going to ask them whether they want to do that for us as well. And by the end of the year, Krita was in the Windows store, and I didn't have to do any consultancy work anymore because it paid for me. That's why I think that if you're making free software available on the Windows Store, you probably should consider asking money for it. But again, you're a sharecropper. You're totally dependent on the store policies. We are not allowed to tell people on the store page that Krita is free and open source software. We are allowed to link to our website, but not to the download page, because that's advertising an alternative way of installing Krita. And of course, this is the Windows Store. Everybody always claims that the Windows Store is a huge, huge failure. Not for us. For us, it's been great. Windows Store and Steam together now pay for 8 people. Working with Intel. This is... So we had done those projects with Intel and KO GmbH, and after some time, also 2017, our friends from Intel approached us again, and they had some interesting projects they wanted to sponsor, like making Krita work better with systems with huge numbers of cores. I was like, yes, but that's an AMD thing these days, isn't it? Intel doesn't have CPUs with a huge number of cores. And they said, oh yes, we have, and sent me a 10-core, 20-thread Xeon, which is really fast and really noisy. So we did a couple of projects with them that were really interesting for us and really interesting for them. We optimized Krita's brush engine a lot. We created some tools in Krita that were interesting for what they called convergent devices and devices with 2 screens, but which basically meant that we now have session management and the window management. And finally, together with Intel, we created the first HDR-capable image editor in the world. We were the first. And that was really, really a success. We usually did lose money on it, though, because we always spend more time on it than there's budget. And anyway, because, well, this is Intel, the budget is gone. What I did learn at this point is only to do the projects that were already interesting for us. A lot of free software projects that start to go commercial to fund development end up doing contract work. That's absolutely killing. If you have your developers, instead of working on your core project, do projects for customers, you're wasting your time. It's mostly useless. So that's something that I've sworn I would never do. There are some people I've discussed this with, and if they are all against funding free software development, then it's mostly their experience that all the good developers stop working on the core project because they have to do projects to bring in the money to pay the salaries, and the project slowly dies. So don't do that. 2018, we did not a fundraiser, but we did this one on our own. Kickstarter really isn't the place to be anymore. We simplified the rewards. You just got a nice download of the digital atelier, a training pack and brush pack, which I had commissioned Ramon to make for us. We made 27K, which is less than the last Kickstarter, but we saved on rewards and fees, and we didn't lose Kickstarter's cut, so more money in our bank account. In this graph, this is a graph Molly provides. Molly is one of our payment providers. We currently have Stripe, Molly, PayPal, and Braintree for various reasons. And that's a pain to manage. The big peak is the fundraiser, of course. And then you see how slowly, year over year, the donations are increasing, but it's still not a lot. We can pay one developer through these donations. These donations come from a donation page you get to after downloading Krita. Some projects have the donation page before allowing you to download. We don't like that. We think that's too pushy. So we ask people for a donation after they download. About 1 in 800 to 1,000 downloads results in a donation. We have about 400,000 downloads a month now. So, 2019, 2020, 2021. 2019, we had enough income from the Windows Store and Steam and the donations that we didn't feel we needed to do a fundraiser. We also felt we had sort of failed with the goal of the last fundraiser. The last fundraiser we did had us go no bugs, 0 bugs, complete stability. In 2019, we were at over 500 bugs, which was awful. I get nightmares about those bug numbers. But we could fund ourselves, and we got more people working on Krita. We did put Krita in the Android App Store and the Chrome OS App Store, working together with Google on that. App Store rules are, if you ask money, then nobody can... no, let me start again. If you install Krita on Android or Chrome OS, you have to use the App Store, so we didn't want to ask for money. So we put in a donation badge inside Krita using Google's payment thing, because you're not allowed to use anything else, because Google is really greedy. This brings in about 70 euros a month currently, but it is still in beta. We just don't have a good tablet GUI. We don't have a really good touch UI. We are working on that. We currently have one person working full-time on Krita for Android and Chrome OS. He's making a lot of progress, but there are so many bugs we need to fix. So that situation is okay. We added Krita to the Epic Store 2 weeks ago. Yes, 2 weeks ago. Last year, we already got an Epic Mega Grant. No, that was 2019. It was even longer ago. Quite a lot of money, and I got a good contact inside Epic. And he approached me. We are going to put applications in the Epic Store. Are you really? Yes. We want to start with 6 applications, and we want to have Krita as part of the first 6. Can you make it? I can try. It's too early to see what the Epic Store is bringing in. I see about 30 sales a day. And it's the same deal as in all the other app stores. You pay, you get updates. But you get the same binary as if you would download from Krita.org. That's it for now. iOS Store and the Apple Store are for now out, because iOS is difficult license-wise. Krita is GPL v3, and we're not going to change that. I'm a firm believer in software freedom. On macOS, we have some problems with Apple deprecating open APIs like OpenGL and replacing them with horrible proprietary APIs that I just don't want to support. And the layers between Metal and OpenGL, the translation layers like Angle, are just not there yet. So, what did we do last week? Well, we launched a dev fund. Another clear clone from what Blender does. This time we even cloned their code base. We just took the fund.blender.org Git repository, cloned it, and started changing it so it would be fund.krita.org. Carl Schwang did most of the work for that, and I'm really grateful to him. It does work, seems to work. We already have about 100 new subscribers. We don't have a corporate subscriber yet, and that's actually quite interesting, not having corporate subscribers. It's a bit the same as Italo was talking about. Over the years, we have been reaching out to VFX studios and game studios. We know they are using Krita because they are telling us so. We've been at SIGGRAPH and they thought, oh, we use Krita, yes, we use Krita for this movie. Oh, it's a wonderful tool. If you can only add this feature, then it would be even greater, and then maybe we would give you some money. This never happened. At one point, we had a CentOS repository because all these studios used to use CentOS, really old versions of CentOS. Then they would ask for test access. And then they would test this for a year, and then we would ask them, and now are you going to pony up for a subscription? And we'd say, sorry, but we really can't afford it. Life is so hard in the VFX industry. So I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen here. The people I know from the studios are all great people. I would like some more money, please. But we'll see whether corporate support is going to happen. It helps that both Adobe and Autodesk are at the moment really busy messing up with their user base. But let's see what's going to happen with fund.krita.org. This month is officially fund.krita.org campaign month. Ramon is going to do a weekly video for a cool new feature from Krita 5. And let's see. It's quite exciting. So what did I learn over the years? I'm summarizing this as asking nicely doesn't work. You cannot fund a project like Krita just from a donation page people see after downloading it. We have about 3 million concurrent users on Windows. We know that because Microsoft tracks every XU execute. We had about 4,000 donations for about 45,000 euros. That's just the donations. Now, if you would go to a Linux-only situation, it would be way worse because those 3 million users we have are all Windows users. Linux and macOS users get lost in rounding errors. The situation for Krita is a bit different than it is for some other applications because we have to patch Qt so badly. We have about 70 to 80 patches to Qt that we can't get upstreamed. That most Linux users use our app image build, which they download from our website. So we got those numbers. We also got numbers for Linux on Steam, because on Steam you can release Linux software. We have 30,000 Windows sales on Steam and 274 Linux sales on Steam. So this is one of the problems I see there, where the Linux community is too small to actually support a project that needs 7 to 9 developers. So let's have some unpopular ideas. If we want to have a chance to get money at all from Linux users, we need to be able to interact with those users directly. And that doesn't happen if people install a distribution package. That's quite apart from the fact that the distribution package probably won't work as well as our app image because of all those Qt patches. So should distribution stop packaging big applications altogether? I mean, no Blender user, no serious Blender user is using Blender from a repository. They all get Blender from blender.org because it needs to be fresh. That brings me then to FlatHub. Krita is on FlatHub and it's being maintained by some really excellent people who also help out getting us fixes. There is even a link to our website on FlatHub, but is there any way to actually ask people on FlatHub directly to give me money? I don't think so, because it's another place where we don't control the distribution of Krita. That makes it really difficult. Then, if we want to reach out to our Linux users, in-app purchases, in-app donation buttons, would those get stripped out? I don't know. I would be curious to learn about that, but that's really the big challenge I see right now for Krita on Linux. Not enough people and not enough contact with those people. So what should we do about that? That's a discussion I would really like to have. I see I still have some time for questions. Were there questions? Mouse, where are you?
There are some questions actually in the shared notes. So I'm sure if you can access them, there should be an icon on the left side of
I'm seeing them. Yeah, got it. Jonathan Riddle asked me, does it help to be part of KDE? And that's a really good question because I've been asking that question myself quite a few times. Because it cuts both ways. Is it good for KDE that Krita is part of it? And is it good for Krita to be part of KDE? In the past couple of years, I've come to the conclusion that it's an excellent thing. It's really wonderful. And not just because KDE gives us a great infrastructure for things like translations, the GitLab, Bugzilla, mailing lists. It brings also new contributors. In general, it just gives me good feels. I'm happy to be part of KDE. It's something that we used to have to explain to users quite a lot a couple of years ago. But apparently the KDE rebranding as a collection of projects instead of just a desktop has worked because I haven't had that question for years anymore. So, yeah, good. Good to be part of KDE. Are you considering adding a premium license for companies making big revenues? No. It's Krita GPL v3. We have got about 1,000 copyright holders. We are not going to relicense. And even so, I would much prefer those big companies to become corporate sponsors and meet with us twice a year so they can discuss their needs. We can prioritize them or not, depending on whether we agree with those needs. So let them become corporate sponsors. I'm not going to make special licenses for them. Why App Image? App Image is wonderful. Well, really it is. It's easy to make. It's really easy to use. People just have to make it executable. People can have 6, 7, 100 different versions around all the time and compare them. The App Image people were wonderful to work with. I just like App Image. Krita is also in the Snap Store. It's also done by a volunteer, just like the Flatpak. I have a feeling that Flatpak, with its portal system, has given us a lot of bugs over the years. So I'm not too eager about Flatpak. I like App Image. It works great. Have you considered offering subscriptions to access binaries? Yes. Well, that's what I was telling about. That is something we did in the KO GmbH days. We had this centralized repository for companies. And when I said we had no one taking up the subscription, that was a lie. We had one company taking out a subscription for €75 a year. So that was not worth it. and I'm not going to do that again. I know that Krita is used a lot by professionals, also in professional studios, but pretty much all the money we get are from individual users. And if those are the people who support me, those are the people I will support most. Some time ago, there were plans to add payments in FlatUp. Maybe a good idea to contact them to know the status of that effort. Will do. Thanks for the tip. Will Krita team try to make deals with governments to have Krita replace its proprietary counterparts in schools? Haven't thought of that. But I do know that I actually went to talk about Krita in several art universities in the Netherlands. The first one in Breda, people were really interesting, and they hung on my lips, and they were all like, "Wow, wonderful!" And at the end of my presentation, they asked me, "So how much is this per month?" I said, "It's free. I told you it's free. I mean, I've given you a USB stick for free with Krita on it. You can start playing with it." Really? Yes, really. Oh, thank you. And at the second studio, the second art university was a bit of a bummer. That was in Tilburg because, well, it was pretty soon examination time. And all the students I was going to talk to about Krita were busy doing animation in Krita. They already knew all about it. But the USB sticks and Schwag was really welcome. The third one in Zwolle, where people are trained to become comic book artists, that was a bit boring. The people were, they had to listen as part of their curriculum, and that didn't work as well. But Krita is already used in art schools. For your information, you can take out a print and have full control of it. Yeah. Will it be a lot of work? I will see about that. So, we have still 3 minutes. Any other question? Do I see someone typing? Yes. To the art prof tomorrow. I didn't know there was one. Yes, I guess so. Tomorrow is Friday. On Saturday I will get my vaccine. So, yeah, will do. So, thank you everyone for listening. See you all around. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your talk. It was very interesting. A big round of virtual applause to you. So this is the last talk for this morning. Just be reminded that in about 15-20 minutes, there will be the office hour for our sponsors. And speaking of BOF, if some of you feels inspired, there are free slots still available for today, tomorrow, and even on Saturday. So if you have ideas or something you want to bring out, feel free to reach the team out and present your idea. There will be some other talks later. So thanks to everyone for joining us this morning, and enjoy the break.